Headquarters of common sense.
Talk Radio.
Let's talk to the Chief Executive of Partnership Learning. That's a multi-academy trust which oversees 12 schools in East London. Roger Leighton. Good evening, Roger.
Good evening.
We all abhor and deplore violence towards women. We all deplore misogyny. Sadiq Khan seems to want it to be a hate crime. The government, thankfully, has decided against that. But when Sadiq Khan says we've got to get this teaching misogyny, behavioural relationships, all this sort of stuff to 4-year-old boys, aren't they a bit young for that sort of thing?
Depends what you mean by that sort of thing. I mean, I just listened to the Sadiq Khan clip there, and I mean, he was talking about everything right up to adulthood there, wasn't he?
But he wanted it into primary schools. That's what he's talking about, and that means 4-year-old kids.
Yeah, it depends what you mean by it. I mean, I just had a quick check back on what the government's guidance says about teaching about relationships in the early years. And look, I don't think we would disagree with this. It says people should be taught to take turns, treat each other with kindness, consideration and respect, truth and honesty, and the concept of personal space. Now, and then it says that in an age-appropriate way. So when they're very young, that would be through stories, through the way they're helped to learn how to play well together. I don't think any of us would disagree with that. We do that with our own children.
I'd have my concerns. I would think that perhaps you're filling a 4-year-old boy's head with things he doesn't eat that don't exist in his head. You're talking about misogyny, violence towards women, relationships. He's 4 years old.
No, I agree with you. You wouldn't be using any of those words or any of those ideas with 4-year-olds. And this isn't about boys as opposed to girls. It's about teaching all young people those concepts of kindness, consideration, respect. Those are the things that they will be helped to learn when they're 4 or 5 years old, but not using words like misogyny or hate crime or even doing anything different for boys or girls, because they all need to learn kindness and consideration.
I think that when they're 4 years old, the average little boy probably is full of kindness and consideration, and then he's going to have some great big grown-up teacher say, I'm going to teach you about misogyny and violence towards women. Suddenly he'll have a whole new skill set. He'll know all about that. And 4 years old, Roger, is it just too young for this, isn't it?
It is too young for this if it's some big bloke talking about the words misogyny, hate crime, and, the way you should treat girls or treat boys. I agree with you, but certainly the government's own guidance doesn't say anything like that. And I'm not sure even Sadiq was really expecting those words and those concepts with 4-year-olds. I think what he did in that quote was sort of join everything together, from what you do with a 4-year-old to what you do with an 18-year-old, or what you do with football fans or whatever. So I think it's a question of age-appropriate activities and learning. And when you're 4, it's going to be about learning through play, isn't it? It's going to be learning through stories. It's not going to be putting words like misogyny on the board and learning how to spell them.
Well, the quote. Here's a quote from him. We've got to start in primary schools in relation to relationship education for boys. What is a healthy relationship? What is appropriate and inappropriate attitudes and behaviour? Going towards taking misogyny a hate crime, making sexual harassment of women in a public place a criminal offence, making sure there's zero tolerance towards inappropriate behaviour and attitudes. He is talking about telling 4-year-old kids this.
No,
I just quoted you. He just said we've got to start in primary schools.
Yes, start with teaching.
Well, he's not making that plain, is he, Roger? He's not making that clear.
And I would not be in favour of, and I don't think any teacher or head teacher would be in favour of teaching 4-year-olds words like misogyny. It's about teaching them respect, kindness, consideration. And yes, those will be the building blocks to later on, quite a lot later on for some of these concepts, teaching directly, about how important it is, to treat each gender equally and be respectful to all genders. So, look, I think this has got a bit mixed up in the headlines. So sometimes happens, doesn't it?
Well, a bit mixed up because of what the mayor said. That's why the headlines reflect exactly what he said. We've got to start in primary schools. I don't want to sound like an old curmudgeon, but it's a while since I was at primary school. But we didn't get taught about this kind of stuff when I was there. We got the sort of 10 times table and how to write English and all that sort of thing. We didn't get behavioural relationship counselling and all this sort of stuff. Why is it necessary to teach these things in primary school to 4-year-old kids?
I don't think it is about teaching it to them. It's about the way that you go about the activities of that age. So look, most of the work in a 3 and 4-year-old's day at school is actually play-based, and you don't specifically teach them how to take turns, but you do, through the play that they indulge in, make sure that you work with them to get the idea of taking turns into their heads. So it's not about sitting down and having a lesson about taking turns, it's about the way we play together. And the same would apply to the idea of relationships and treating each other with respect and kindness. It wouldn't be sitting down having a lesson about it instead of doing the times tables. It would be making sure that in the way you get them playing together, the way that you get them being creative and making up stories, that you help them build on their natural kindness and respect for each other.
So relationship education for 4-year-old boys is a good idea?
A relationship education as a subject taught on the blackboard, no. But working with both boys and girls to develop the ideas of kindness, consideration and respect, that is a good idea. And like I say, that's what good parents do, don't they?
Sure.
Just by the way that they interact with their children in the park or at home, playing a game or reading a book or whatever, we expect good families to develop those qualities of kindness and consideration and respect. You'd expect a good school to help develop as well. But it's not about teaching them at that age, not an actual lesson. It's about the way you do things together.
Totally. Good to talk to you, Roger. Thank you so much for your...
Good talk.
Hot talk. Bold talk. Talk radio.
Listen on your smart speaker.
Watch it live on your smart TV.
The world headquarters of common sense.
Talk Radio.